I never imagined that my sister's wedding would be the day everything changed, the day I uncovered the truth about my family, the day I learned about Aunt Julie's fortune. It was supposed to be a joyous occasion, filled with love, laughter, and celebration. But instead, it became the day that shattered the illusion I had lived under my entire life. The morning started like any other wedding day, chaotic, buzzing with excitement, and, of course, dominated by my sister Olivia's commanding presence. As the bride, she had taken control of everything, making sure no detail was overlooked. She sparkled in her designer wedding gown, a dress that cost more than my yearly salary as a kindergarten teacher. Meanwhile, I, the younger sister, had been given minor, forgettable tasks. "Betty, where are the welcome bags for the VIP guests?" Olivia snapped, adjusting her veil for what must have been the 100th time. "And please, tell me you're not wearing those shoes to my wedding." I glanced down at my practical, well-worn heels, the nicest pair I owned. "These are fine, Olivia," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. She rolled her eyes, a look I had grown painfully accustomed to over the years. "This is why Aunt Julie always preferred me," she muttered. "You just don't understand class." The mention of Aunt Julie made my heart ache. She had passed away 4 months ago, and the grief still sat heavily in my chest. Unlike the rest of our family, who cared more about wealth and status than anything else, Aunt Julie had been different. She had lived a quiet, modest life in her small cottage, tending to her beloved garden and teaching me the value of kindness, hard work, and finding joy in life's simple pleasures. She was the only one who truly saw me, the only one who understood that life was about more than designer labels and exclusive social circles. "Don't start with Aunt Julie again," Olivia scoffed, waving a manicured hand dismissively. She was just a strange old woman who chose to live like a pauper despite having a trust fund. Thank God she left everything to charity, like she always said she would. Can you imagine if she'd given that money to you? You'd probably waste it on your students or something equally ridiculous. I bit my tongue, swallowing the retort that threatened to rise. She would never understand why I spent so many afternoons with Aunt Julie, learning about herbs and flowers while she was off at country clubs and luxury spa retreats. The wedding was set to begin in an hour at the Grand Plaza Hotel, the most expensive venue in the city, of course. Olivia had made sure everything was flawless, from the imported flowers to the Michelin-starred catering. It was the wedding of her dreams, the kind that would be featured in high-end bridal magazines. And yet, all I could think about was Aunt Julie, her warm smile, her gentle wisdom, and the secrets she had taken with her. Or so I thought. Because that day, amidst the extravagant decor and carefully curated perfection, I discovered something that would turn my world upside down. Aunt Julie's legacy wasn't what everyone assumed, and neither was her fortune. Everything I thought I knew about my family was about to change. I was adjusting place cards at the reception when an elderly gentleman in an impeccably tailored suit approached me. "Miss Betty Friedan?" he asked, his voice formal yet kind. "Yes, that's me," I replied, my curiosity piqued. He pulled an envelope from his briefcase. "I'm Henry Timothy, your Aunt Julie's attorney. She left strict instructions that this letter was to be delivered to you precisely 4 months after her passing, and specifically on your sister's wedding day." My hands trembled as I took the envelope. It was heavy, sealed with wax in an old-fashioned way, so typically Aunt Julie. But before I could open it, Olivia's sharp voice sliced through the air. "Betty, what are you doing? The ceremony starts in 45 minutes. She stopped short when she saw the envelope in my hands. "What's that?" "It's from Aunt Julie," I said quietly. "Her lawyer just delivered it." Olivia's perfectly made-up face twisted in irritation. Oh God, not more drama from that old woman. She's still causing problems even from the grave. "Just throw it away, Betty. This is my day." Our parents, attracted by the commotion, hurried over. "What's going on?" Mom demanded, her surgeon's trained eye assessing the scene in an instant. "Aunt Julie left a letter for Betty," Olivia said, her voice dripping with disdain. "To be delivered today of all days." "Dad, Never one for sentiment when it interfered with social obligations, checked his Rolex. Betty, put that away. We have important guests arriving. The governor and his wife will be here any minute. But for once in my life, I didn't comply. Something about the weight of that envelope and the precise timing of its delivery made me stand my ground. I'm opening it, I said firmly. Don't you dare. Olivia lunged for the envelope, but I stepped back. You're not ruining my wedding with whatever crazy final words that poor old woman left you. The word poor struck me like a slap.
How dare they?
How dare they dismiss Aunt Julie, who had shown me more love and wisdom than any of them? With shaking fingers, I broke the wax seal, bracing myself for whatever truth lay inside. I broke the seal and opened the envelope. Several documents slipped out, along with a letter written in Aunt Julie's elegant handwriting. As my eyes scanned the words, the world around me seemed to stop spinning. My dearest Betty, the letter began. If you're reading this, I am gone, and your sister is about to marry the investment banker she believes will give her the life of luxury she's always wanted. But there are some things you need to know. I could hardly believe what I was reading. Aunt Julie had not been living modestly because of a small trust fund. She had, in fact, been the secret CEO of Montgomery Industries, a global technology and real estate empire worth billions. The quaint cottage, the garden, the simple life, it had all been her choice. While your sister and parents only saw my small cottage, the letter continued, they never looked deeper. They never tried to understand that true wealth isn't about flaunting riches. But you, my dear Betty, you understood. You saw me for who I was, not what I owned. That is why I am leaving everything to you. My breath hitched as I turned to the accompanying documents, each one confirming her words. Aunt Julie had left me her entire estate, the company, the real estate holdings, the investment portfolios, all of it, valued at approximately $95 million. What does it say? Olivia demanded, her voice sharp with impatience. Betty, what did that crazy old woman write? I looked up at my family, Olivia in her designer wedding dress, my parents in their luxurious attire, all of them staring at me with barely concealed disdain. I took a steadying breath. Aunt Julie wasn't poor, I said quietly. She was the CEO of Montgomery Industries. And she left everything to me. The silence that followed was deafening. Olivia's face turned from red to pale white. Mom's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering against the marble floor. Dad stammered something about family obligations and sharing wealth, but I wasn't listening anymore. I carefully folded the letter and placed it in my purse. Then, without hesitation, I pulled out my phone and ordered a car. Where are you going? Olivia shrieked. You can't leave. I'm about to get married. We need to discuss this. Olivia's voice was sharp, demanding my attention. I turned to her, feeling stronger than I ever had before.
No, Olivia.
You made it clear. This is your day. So celebrate it. I have things to take care of. As I walked out of the Grand Plaza Hotel, I could hear Olivia's furious screams behind me, but they no longer mattered. In my purse, I clutched a small key. Aunt Julie had included it with her letter. The key to her cottage. But it wasn't just a cottage anymore. It was the beginning of my new life. Mr. Timothy was waiting near the hotel entrance. There's a car ready for you, Miss Friedan. The board of directors is expecting you tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Your aunt spoke very highly of you. I nodded, my mind drifting to those afternoons in Aunt Julie's garden. I had thought she was only teaching me about herbs and flowers. But now I realized she had been teaching me about life, about business, about strength without cruelty. As the car pulled away from the hotel, my phone exploded with messages from Olivia and my parents. I glanced at the screen. 80 missed calls and over 150 unread messages. I turned it off. They'd had years to show me love and respect. Now they had to live with their choices. The car sped towards Aunt Julie's cottage, my cottage now. I took a deep breath, knowing that this was just the beginning of my story. The next morning felt surreal as I stepped into the towering Montgomery Industries headquarters. The security guard smiled warmly. Good morning, Miss Friedan. Mr. Timothy is waiting for you in the penthouse office. My heart pounded as I entered what had been my aunt's office. Now it was mine. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a breathtaking view of the city, but what truly caught my eye was the small herb garden in one corner. Even here, Aunt Julie had kept her connection to simple things. "Your aunt spent every morning tending to those herbs," Mr. Timothy said, noticing my gaze. She said it kept her grounded, reminded her of what really mattered. Before we could begin reviewing the company documents, my phone buzzed again. Against my better judgment, I turned it back on. Olivia was calling. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello. How dare you?" she screamed. "You ruined my wedding. Half the guests left after your dramatic exit." The governor's wife was asking questions about Aunt Julie and Montgomery Industries. "Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was?" I sighed, gripping the edge of my desk. "I'm sorry your wedding didn't go as planned, Olivia," I said calmly. But even as I spoke, I knew I wasn't sorry. Not one bit. I spoke calmly, channeling Aunt Julie's strength. "But I'm not sorry for opening that letter. We're family." Olivia's voice suddenly turned sweet, her manipulative side shining through. "We need to discuss this inheritance together. Daddy's already talking to his lawyers. You can't possibly handle a company this size. You're a kindergarten teacher, for God's sake." Mr. Timothy, who had been discreetly listening, handed me a stack of papers. The top document made me smile. "Actually, Olivia, I can. Aunt Julie spent the last 6 years secretly training me. All those weekends at her cottage? We weren't just gardening. She was teaching me about business, investments, leadership. She documented everything." There was a long silence before Olivia's true colors showed again. "You conniving little snake. You manipulated her, turned her against us. We're going to contest this will, and when we win, you'll regret this." I ended the call and turned to Mr. Timothy. "They're going to contest the will." He smiled knowingly. "Your aunt anticipated that. Would you like to see what else was in that envelope you haven't opened yet?" I carefully unfolded the remaining documents, and my stomach turned. Inside was devastating evidence, proof of every time my family had tried to manipulate Aunt Julie for money. Olivia's secret credit card debt, my parents' failed investment schemes, and the most damning of all, proof that they had attempted to have Aunt Julie declared mentally incompetent 3 years ago to seize control of her assets. "She kept everything," Mr. Timothy explained. "Every email, every recorded conversation, every legal document. She wanted you protected." The next few weeks were a whirlwind. While my family filed their lawsuit, I immersed myself in running Montgomery Industries. The board of directors, already aware of my secret training, supported me completely. Aunt Julie's executive assistant, Christina, became my right hand, helping me navigate the corporate world. My family's lawsuit fell apart spectacularly. Their lawyers quit when they saw the evidence of their prior attempts to seize Aunt Julie's assets. The judge was particularly unimpressed with Olivia's tearful performance about family loyalty, especially after reviewing recordings of her mocking Aunt Julie's pathetic lifestyle. The final blow came during a settlement meeting a month after the wedding. My family arrived, smug and confident, with a new lawyer, clearly expecting to negotiate. Instead, they found themselves facing the board of directors and a presentation detailing their own financial misdeeds. "You've been using Montgomery Industries subsidiary companies to secure loans and credit lines," one of the financial analysts stated, pulling up the records. My parents and Olivia paled as their fraudulent dealings were laid out before them. Olivia's voice wavered. You can't do this." I met her gaze, unwavering. "Aunt Julie already did. And now, so have I." With their credibility destroyed and their reputation in tatters, they had no choice but to withdraw the lawsuit. I watched them leave, knowing that for the first time in my life, I was free. As I stepped back into my office, I glanced at the small herb garden Aunt Julie had kept in the corner. She had known all along what I was capable of. And now so did I. I explained, watching their faces pale. "Aunt Julie allowed this because she believed in giving family second chances. But that ends today." "You can't do this," Dad sputtered. "You mean I can't hold my own parents accountable?" I replied. "Parents who haven't called me once without mentioning money since the wedding?" You have two choices. Drop the lawsuit and pay back everything you owe, or I'll press charges for fraud. Mom burst into tears. But Olivia's wedding put us in debt. We had to maintain appearances. A wedding you didn't even invite Aunt Julie to, I reminded them. Though now I understand why. You were afraid she'd show up in her gardening clothes and embarrass you in front of your society friends. In the end, they signed the papers, dropping the lawsuit. Olivia stormed out, screaming about betrayal. Mom couldn't look me in the eye. Dad tried one last time to lecture me about family obligations, but fell silent when Mr. Timothy started pulling out more evidence files. 7 months later, Montgomery Industries was thriving under my leadership. I had launched a new charitable foundation in Aunt Julie's name, providing scholarships to underprivileged students and funding community gardens in urban areas. The small herb garden in my office had expanded, and I spent every morning tending it, just like Aunt Julie had. Her cottage remained exactly as she had left it. I spent weekends there, reminding myself of what truly mattered. The corporate world was exhilarating, but true happiness came from staying grounded, just as Aunt Julie had always taught me. The last I heard, Olivia's marriage was already in trouble. Apparently, her husband wasn't as wealthy as she had thought, and their extravagant lifestyle was built on debt. My parents had been forced to downsize, selling their mansion to pay off what they owed. They sent Christmas cards full of subtle hints about reconciliation, which I neatly filed away with the rest of the evidence. One quiet evening, as I sat in Aunt Julie's cottage garden, watching the sunset, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace. I had chosen a different path from my family, one built on integrity and purpose. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, I knew this was just the beginning. I found an old diary of Aunt Julie's, its worn pages filled with her familiar, elegant handwriting. As I flipped through, my eyes landed on the last entry, and as I read, tears welled up. My dearest Betty, you think I've been teaching you about herbs and flowers, but all along, I've been teaching you about life. In a world obsessed with flaunting wealth, you have discovered the beauty of simplicity. In a family fixated on status, you have remained true to yourself. You are ready now, ready to lead, ready to prove that true power comes not from cruelty, but from kindness. The garden will always remind you, the strongest plants aren't the showiest, but the ones with the deepest roots. I looked up from the diary, glancing around at the thriving garden outside and the empire I now commanded. A smile tugged at my lips. Aunt Julie had given me far more than wealth. She had given me wisdom. And that was worth more than all the millions in the world. The chime of the cottage doorbell pulled me from my thoughts. Christina stood at the doorstep, holding the latest company reports. I invited her in, ready to discuss the day's agenda. But something else caught my eye. Among the neatly stacked documents was a folded newspaper. Olivia's face was on the front page, her once perfect life unraveling as her husband's financial schemes came to light. I sighed, setting the paper aside without reading further. There were more important things to focus on. Herbs to tend, a company to lead, and people to help, just as Aunt Julie had taught me. Because that's what real family does.